Howdy, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Polynesian Eyes podcast. We're excited to have another live digital conversation.
Mm.
We are once again coming on Starlink. Hopefully, this time around, Starlink doesn't give us as many buffers. Hopefully, the tariffs and the feud between Uncle Donald and cousin Musk doesn't interfere with our broadcast today. But another beautiful day here in Las Vegas, Nevada. Mr. Aotearoa, how are things in your neck of the woods?
Good day. It's a Sabbath day here in Aotearoa. Still kind of cold. Lazy Sunday for me too. Supposed to go to church, but I took a skip for today since the wife and my mother-in-law is not in the country at the moment. So I just thought I'll take a I'll take a skip on the church today. But I was able to be a little productive. Try to do some little cleaning the windows since it was a little bit of a beautiful day today. So other than that, really kind of chill kind of day today, Tua, on the Sabbath Aotearoa day. Malo.
Um, Looks like we got some comments coming in
Hey,
early.
Clyde
Clyde
Moore.
Moore says, Malo e taulava, mai kautama. Awesome, awesome.
Malo, Clyde
And
Moore.
he also says, Koeni kololo tonga tolo maka heni in
Oh,
Compton. I
wow.
just
Oh,
saw that. I just saw that. I don't know if you know, Mr. Aotearoa, but apparently there's riots and stuff going on in California. And
okay.
Donald Trump just took over the California National Guard and is deploying them.
Holy snap. Hey, what's going on, man? I have no idea. I've been kind of out of the loop with what's going on. What's been happening in Compton? I know that's Clyde Moore, is that still the top of the original gangsta place? Is Compton still maintain that reputation, or has it calmed down in Compton? But I'm interested with what the cause of the riots, man. What's going on?
Yeah, let me pull up a video here and we can, it wasn't part of our program, but we're
Yeah.
gonna pull it up here just to kind of touch on it since Clyde Moore brought it up. It is breaking news right now. So
Was it another
let me see.
black police brutality kind of thing?
It has to do with the ICE raids. So immigration.
Oh, what's wrong with that, man? They don't. The Compton, California, still love the illegals.
I mean, you know, this is the thing, we've had some of these internal conversations, right? Mussy is we all have family and friends that are in that zone we love, but
Yes.
at the same time, we also have to recognize that you take certain risks, right? Just like when I speed on the freeway, do I think everyone's evil if they speed? But I also know if I speed and the cop pulls me over, I can't be angry with the cop, right?
Mm,
Like that's just part of law and order. That's just the name of the game. And if you're willing to gamble, well, then you gotta take the risks that go with it. But that's kind of my initial thoughts. Must you have anything to add to that before we go to the lawlessness that's going on in California?
yeah, I mean, to like what you said, to we share the same concerns and share the what would you call it? Share the understanding that we do had some relatives who were on the borderline, either overstayed or whatever. But like what you said, it's a risk, and if they get caught, you did everything you can to assist them. But if they get caught, they gotta go. But at the same time, I understand as a national security, everyone needs to go through one lane so that everyone can be vetted, and it's just a fair process. So, to me, it's another level if you're, the community. It looks like it's the community. Some communities are going up to revolt against the deportation of illegal aliens. So that's to me
Well,
that's a
this is
interesting take on that.
no, and that's the thing. I mean, here, this is what I was going to say earlier, but Clyde Moore says here, I seen photos of pre-placed stacked of bricks. This is kind of BLM,
Oh yeah, oh boy.
like organized. Someone is funding this. This is not quote unquote, grassroots. This is what they call the astroturf, in my opinion. So it's
Mm,
it's just trying to cause issues. You know, it's really important that I mean, I think it's fair to say that if I was in their shoes, I would. If someone like Joe Biden was saying everybody come for free, no issue, I would do it if I was a non-citizen. So I don't blame the people who came across, right? And I don't blame the government, Donald Trump and them for trying to hold the line somewhere. It's life, but at the end of the day, you can't just have chaos. You have to have some level of law and order. So let's
Yeah.
let's take a look at the video here real quick. We'll make the screen a little bit bigger for the video so we can
Okay.
see it a little bit better and play it.
Ground, Lindsay Pena has reaction for us tonight. Lindsay.
Yeah, that's right. We're just down the street from where Chris Wolf was. We're on Temple, around the corner from the federal building, and we were actually at that rally and then subsequent march a little bit earlier. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of that video. You just heard a description of what ended up happening during the march, but most of that rally was peaceful. A lot of people coming out in support of those who were taken into custody during the raids today. We were actually able to talk to one woman who says her husband was one of those people. He was taken into custody at a Home Depot in Westlake. Now, she tells me she was able to see him for just a few minutes earlier today. She had to tell her two young daughters their father won't be home tonight.
I explained to her when we picked her up from school with my sister,
That's sad.
that I've been talking to her every day about this, so she kind of knows. I told her I don't know what we're gonna do, but we're gonna be okay. We don't have a big family, but we have my sister, my brother-in-law, and with that we're gonna be okay and stick together and try to get him. If he is able to get released here, then that's great. If not, then work hard and try to see how we could keep the family together.
All they're doing is putting food on their table and making this economy work. And so what we saw today and throughout the country is a government that's putting federal agents in military gear against residents of this city and cities throughout the country.
Now, during today's raids, SEIU President David Huerta was injured and taken to the hospital. Union members that we spoke with out here say he is still in federal custody. Now, we were also able to talk to one of the local assembly members who represents this district today, and he tells me that he is outraged about what took place here in Los Angeles. We'll hear from him later tonight, as well as more from that mother who is waiting to see what will happen to her husband. For now, we are live in downtown LA. Lindsay Pena, KTLA 5 News. Back to you.
What are your thoughts, Mr. Aotearoa?
It's like I said, it is sad regarding that gentleman's case, but I don't know. That's the thing. We don't know the details. What was, if he did. To me, if people already lodge, let's just say, have already filed for their immigration status, and then they're kind of been in, they're held just to make sure and verify that status. I think they should be let back. But if there's like, let's just say, if your status is still illegal, I mean, it's kind of sad. Um, I would just say we just need to be careful with the immigration stuff. Like I just go back to with the whole why immigration. I just take it back to the days of, like, since I'm living here in New Zealand, just in the Maori sense, the Maoris, a lot of the the people who came from Europe. Remember, they came. It was open borders kind of thing. And what happens when you
Hmm.
have open borders? Look, they've come, and then they say
Took
they're the
over.
majority. Took over. They have the majority, and the reason why the Maoris wanted them to keep coming, because it was making them richer at the same time, because trading was going really well with the European goods, and they were trading with the Maori goods. So you wanted to keep that trading going, but it's at a cost, because now you're having an open invitation of open immigration to say, and look what happened, right? The tide has turned, and it's going to be very difficult to reverse that. That's what I'm trying to say, that immigration is a very fragile thing that we need to be careful, and it the our let's just say our lawmakers need to take it seriously with the immigration policy, because like I said, once you do it, it is very difficult, because look where Trump has to revert to deportation, and that's difficult because we have
Yeah.
people. It's almost like a war tour. There could be some innocent casualties that can happen in the process because of how bad it was the last 4 years, especially.
Hmm.
So to me, that's how I see immigration too, because I take it back with the same philosophy. If the Maoris had an understanding, would they change? Would they have some kind of vetting process, knowing that they had a bunch of European ships that just came to the shores and settled? They would have changed things now, but it's very difficult to change because the power is reversed now. Now the Maoris don't have that political power to change that because they're not the majority, right? And look, if you look at it now that the immigration, we've had the New Zealand is very open immigration. We've had a lot more Indians, Filipinos come, and that's changing the demographics. And Maoris, are gonna drop down to be the number three instead of the number two. So, and then when you're
It'll
dropping to the,
change the dynamics.
your
Yeah.
power just even shrinks more, or influence. So,
Yeah.
and that's what
And
I mean
that's,
about learning. That's what I mean
yeah.
about learning from the history, Tua. Like, immigration is one of those things you gotta do it right. I mean, I think you can say the same thing for Hawaii with during the time of the kingdom, you know, having open borders to a lot, and then you have people who have bad motives, and then power got shifted, right? And that's the thing with the cost of money, because you can even say if Tonga wanted to do really wealthy, they can have open borders to develop a lot of the land, and people will be rich, but there's going to be a cost. And when you have that,
Hmm.
very difficult to reverse. So that's why in Tonga we like the where we're at. We have our own problems, but it's not big problems in my opinion. But that's where I kind of stand to it with the whole immigration. I know it's sad, but man, Trump is just trying to fix the problems from 4 years ago, and there's going to be some casualties that will happen along the way. That's just my take
No,
there.
100%. I mean, and let's use the example of the African American voter bloc here in the U.S. Right?
Mm,
That's what the African Americans are now learning is, hey, dude, in like 10 to 20 more years, they're going to be replaced as the largest minority, and then all of a sudden, they will not have the influence that they've had. And like what you mentioned, that's a serious. If I was a Maori, I would be very, very concerned because you have a lot of influence now because you're the majority minority. Once, and we all know how politics goes, all of a sudden politics is going to be boils down to the vote. And if
mm,
you're a smaller block of the minority group, you become less important. And the African Americans learn that, right? Like
yeah,
now the African Americans are now learning, it's like all of a sudden their issues, which they could influence elections heavily because they were a large voting bloc, even though they're a minority, now all of a sudden they're being put to the side for a whole new demographic group, right?
mm,
And this is a group that doesn't share the same perceptions and wants and hopes as the other groups, and it's going to be very difficult. And I mean, even Tonga at a point stopped new religions from coming into Tonga for that exact same
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
right? Is that
yeah.
influence, and that's what drove that land ownership. You had to be Tongan to own land. And what does that automatically do? If you're a person coming from overseas and you can't own land,
Mm,
the motivation to come in is dramatically diminished, right? But when they were coming in with the Maoris and stuff in New Zealand, they could get land, they could
correct.
build, right, and they could get influence and control. And so I think 100% what you're saying is there's a risk. I'm not saying one is right or wrong. You just have to be prepared to accept the consequences. If you decide to have open immigration, okay, that's great, but there's a price. And if you have a more controlled immigration,
Mm,
okay, but there's also a price to that too,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, I'm a
You
big
might not make
believer in.
you
Go ahead,
might not
Messi.
make it. No, I was gonna say there's the risk. I'm thinking of that. You might not be as wealthy in a faster amount of time, but like I said, you culturally and probably the safety is you're betting on. That's what you're choosing because
Yeah, Well, and I think this is no different than, we're talking about more of people, but this is also applicable to trade, right? Like this is what the whole fight over the tariffs and stuff is. Everyone's dependent on China, right? We learned from COVID. All of a sudden, you had to import everything from overseas, and you're overly dependent. Yeah, that made things cheaper, but if things go bad, how can you make sure you can take care of your people? And
Yep.
everybody
Yep.
learned that COVID is like, oh my gosh, if China or India or those who do all the manufacturing, they decide not to send stuff over, then all of a sudden you're vulnerable. And you have to take those into account. And you might have to fight more for your domestic manufacturing. You might have to say, you know what, we're not just going to have quote unquote unlimited cheap labor just for the sake of having, I mean, cheap goods just for the sake of having cheap goods. Maybe for certain goods, it's worth paying a little
Mm,
bit more. I don't know.
mm.
Everywhere there's
Yep.
choices, but this is actually a good segue, after all, into our kind of the root or the meat of the discussion today. And we talked about it a little bit here and there on various episodes. And I really like the analogy of the root, right? And the stem and the branches of the trees of what it means to be Polynesian, especially,
Mm,
in a modern world where we are not only competing within our countries and the interests of our people, but we're spread all over the world and we're competing with the world at large. And so
mm,
it's really trying to understand, what does it mean to be Polynesian, and how do we take that into account with a changing world? I don't think, this is my opinion, and I want to see what your thoughts are, Mr. Aotearoa. What it meant to be a Polynesian 200 years ago is not the same that it's a Polynesian to today. And we can even say, even within the generation of our parents to us now,
mm,
it has shifted dramatically. And at the rate things are changing from us to the next generation, our children and grandchildren, that shift is going to be even greater and in a shorter amount of time, with AI and technology and wealth, and the movement of people around the world. As we can see, we have to figure out, like, what are the parts that we can sacrifice, and what's the most important part, what's the root or the core of what it means to be Polynesian, is getting more and more important to understand than ever before.
mm.
Any thoughts to add to that, Mr. Aotearoa?
I think we touched about it a little bit, Tua. I think in our previous episodes about if we really had to pick one thing that was most important, language or knowing your family genealogy and heritage, right? Your heritage and knowing your family genealogy is very important. That's and knowing who you are as right as a Polynesian, as a Tongan, Samoan, right, or
Mm-hmm.
Hawaiian, Maori. That to me, that's the most important. What does that look like? Knowing knowing where you come from, knowing the history of your ancestors in your own family, and just the history of where you come from. Language is still very critical because I feel like right language allows you the tool to because it does help with certain perspectives, and I can say that because one you tend to engage more and inspire others to the maintain the culture and maintain your Tonganness or Ha'amoaness or Maori or whatever, right? That language helps too, but like I said, the language is more of the stem. Your heritage and
Mm-hmm.
genealogy is the root. That's what makes you you. That's what makes you Tongan. That's what makes you, you know, uh, I don't know, be part of your like even with the whole Tongan thing or Polynesian, you have your own uniqueness just within your own family on how you guys operate. So that's why it's really important to know your heritage, your genealogy, because that's what gives you your your proper identity. Language is the stem because that allows you to have a further reach. Like reach out to the branches and make it really nice, more complete. But when everything, the world is changing really, really quickly. But when it gets,
Hmm.
and and if the world's moving so quickly that you can't adjust real quick with it, or adapt quickly to the changing world, fast enough, then you might be able just to hold on to the root, which is your heritage and family genealogy. That's just my take on that.
No, 100%. And just to add on to that, before we go into the first video, we'll do a reaction to. I think it really just boils down. Start with your family relationship, is where this is all kind of boiling to, and why does that matter? Because if you believe that all of Polynesia was one nation, and the practice of Tokatufa was really a family, the governance of the Polynesian nation was a family-based governance, meaning, you know, the leadership that lived on these islands were tied by familial ties, right, to the Tonga, to Tangaloa, and that's how we were structured. And really, that relationship over thousands and thousands of miles was based off of family. Each corner or each group of islands within the Polynesian Empire would develop their own unique cultures, even little changes in their language, even
Mm,
certain behaviors. But they all knew there was one thing that tied them all together: family,
yeah.
right? It was what you're saying. It's that 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 familial tie is what held and really stabilized the entire empire for thousands of years. And
Mm,
so here's a comment here, Mushy, if you want to read it and kind of give your
all
thoughts
right.
to it.
Awesome. Clyde Moore. Regarding culture, could we say that it is ever evolving? Back in the States, I have found a few subtle differences. The culture adapts to the country, not so much as a whole. Okay, what you think? What you think about that, Tua? About Clyde Moore's question? There, and I'll give my take on it.
Yeah, that's what we were kind of mentioning, where I agree 100% with it. This is where we're talking about the branches, right? The words you use and interact in slang, that your preferences in food, your preferences sometimes with music and art, those things can shift and change and do very quickly, especially in the world we live in now. But the one thing that doesn't change is your family, is your cultural heritage, it's your blood connections, and that is the stabilizing unit, right? That's one of the things I
Mm,
think. I think the West has kind of drifted off course. Is the West has some of them, not always. Many of them think the most important unit in society is the individual, right? They think, oh, individual rights. That's why they're so
correct.
focused on rights, because it's about the individual. Where Polynesian community comes in, they said, no, we recognize the individual is important, but what's more important than the individual is the family. The
Correct.
family is what's more important. It is your duty and your willingness to sacrifice to to do what is best for the family. Sometimes it may appear that what doing what's best for the family sometimes appears to be a negative for the individual in the short term, but in
Mm,
the long term, it
it's
being it's more beneficial for the individual. So this is where I think what, as Polynesians, we bring to the table. We bring great things, the culture, the tattooing, and all those great things. But I think what's the most powerful thing that we bring to the table is the core, is the root of what it means to be Polynesian, and that is the family. And so that's my initial thoughts to that, Mr. Aotearoa. Any thoughts?
nice.
What's
No,
your thoughts to
I'm
that?
I'm just thinking of the take, like what Clyde was mentioning. Even the word, even now that I've kind of lived in Samoa and now I've come out, the word "oos." That's a evolved language
Yeah.
from the Uso, and the "oos" is a good example of the diaspora of Ha'amoas living overseas, that they kind of created their own new word of a "oos," because
Hmm.
"oos" is not a word that you use in
It's not a
Ha'amoa.
traditional word.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's not. So that's kind of the subtle like evolving of the culture, kind of what Clymore was saying to the country. So those are the little subtle changes that's happening, and I think more stuff is gonna happen. The bigger the Polynesian communities continue to migrate around the world, there's going to be that changing, and even even between the two Ha'amoas, independent Ha'amoa and American Samoa, they call different foods different names. For example,
Really?
Tua, yeah, the Chinese steam buns, Tua. In Hawaii they call it
Yeah.
manapua,
The Manapua,
right?
man.
Yes, they call it manapua. And in American Samoa, they still use that term because of, I think it's because of the strong flight, because there is
Connection
that
to
direct
Hawaii.
flight to Hawaii. So the Ha'amoas who grew up in American Samoa still refer to those steam buns as manapua. But in independent Samoa, they call it keke pua'a, which is different.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying with the subtle changes, because you're gonna be involved with a lot of migrations, and American Samoa, because I think that there's a flight constantly to Hawaii, and then Hawaii's always referred that. Those are the subtle changes that will happen, and more of that's gonna come, and I think it's gonna exponentially speed up because AI is starting to come. It's gonna make the world even smaller, right? And it's gonna allow us to probably interact with people who are very opposite from how we think. So that's just my take on that, and just giving some examples on that.
Okay. So I think what we'll do now is there was another video I was gonna show first, but I think we're gonna jump in first to a TikTok video. Um, let me see here. Let's share this tab. We'll react to this one, and this is a Tongan gentleman who is in
Oh,
his observations of the differences, the subtlety of the differences of his experience of Tongans in Tonga, New Zealand, Australia, and the US. And
okay,
so let's walk through that. It's kind of gone viral. I think it has like almost 40,000 views on it.
okay.
So let's see what this Toko has. I think he's kind of like a bodybuilder. Oh, no, wrong one. Wrong one. Where is it? Sorry. Can you still see the screen there,
Yep,
Masi?
yep. See, I see it. There we go.
Okay. Let me make sure the sound's up and running. Okay.
All right.
Let's do it.
Ko e whewhitio koe ni, pia te i he nihi ko toa pē, o toki hiki mai pe no mawahi mai mi Tonga, pe ko New Zealand, Australia, whinga wheituku pe, ki Amerikani. Lawe ne tae taha, i ku ela i Amerikani, o lawa ki o sio whai kehe koe ia, ai,
Hey,
aki nā
My
tōko
man
pene
has
whare i Tonga, nā tōko
what
pene
you
whare i Tonga
call
pe ala ki New Zealand.
a filter. My man has a kava filter on.
Righty.
You know you
I was just gonna say, is his Fotunga the real one, or is it AI too? Fotunga papel mai siya na
well,
me
the
aloy be.
muscles are AI. The muscles are not. Muscle. Because you know what? His name is Sonny Physique.
Oh,
Man. So
righty.
yeah, I thought that was funny. He
That
has that
was funny.
filter on.
That was hilarious.
Ko New Zealand, o hange bia ko Tonga, a kau Tonga ko tupa koe New Zealand. Kai ke, ko e wa takai holo pia whakasi holo. Kau Tonga, ke mahene maha ki kau Tonga i Morini, i Amerikani, Pe taimi koe ia, mau ko whinga ki whakawhiahi me kau Tonga koe i Amerikani, So kehe koe ai anga, hange koe ni. I New Zealand, pe ko Tonga, pe ko Australia, ka pai e kia taha ke te koe, pe o ke tika he akapulu, pe o ke poto he vainga akapulu, pe o ke poto whainga mea pe, Ko e anga maha e ni, o ku, ka pai nei te tupa ki Tonga, Te ki I whakamāmā, te ki, te ave atu petari, te ki ave atu lei lou pe, Kaike, I Amerikani kehei, ka pa eke ata taha, o ke poto I he lele, o ke poto I he akapulu, o ke poto hawhainga mea, o ke whemau ke te talange iyo, ka pau ke poto, iyo, pa ke tange iyo kou sai po kou tika po kou ha. He kou tala atu. Ka pau te ke ki I tari lei lo atu. E alu fo I tamae ko ia, o tala holo, ko fo I vare kua, O ke vare ko hono whae ngai mea koe ni, Hange koe ni, Ka pai haa ki fo I pakau ia, Whai huia, Pehe mai peki pakau ia siat ka koe pane pehe te urawa tai ko, Ka pau ke lawa reha mea ko tala atu. E alu ki fo I pakau e koe na tala holo, O ku ke vare ngua he fuhu, Tene pehe peo malo he taha koto ke mi Tonga, Ko Tonga, ko pehe paha fo I tā hoka, Ka koe ni ka pai te ke ki lei lou atu pe koe pe te ke ki I tari anga whakatō ki laro atu, Ko tala atu. E lau I holo koe I, tala holo koe o ke vare he fuhu, pe o ke irifia I ahai, Kaike.
Aho lau, Mosi, aho lau. Ana laiso mai
I'm still processing. Tua si tanoa ki toa goini. But what's your initial thoughts, Tua?
Well, there's two things. I mean, I do kind of agree, in my humble opinion. I mean, hopefully, our New Zealand and Australia, I think, is a little bit of a step up. But I don't see a big jump between Tonga and New Zealand, right? New Zealand to me is, there's some economic improvement. But if I had the choice to live within Tonga or New Zealand in the modern day, right?
Yeah.
Probably like maybe 40 years ago, maybe that wasn't the case. And the ease of going from Tonga to New Zealand seems to be pretty easy. I would live in Tonga and travel to New Zealand. That's the way I would do it, right? That's kind of my personal thing, because I kind of like I see it very similar. And when you look at the behavior of Tongans living in New Zealand and Tonga, it's very similar. I agree with him. I don't hang out. I don't have enough context, I think, with the Australian Tongans as much. I have a little bit more because of family, and usually when we go to Tonga, I usually stop in New Zealand.
Correct.
I don't stop a lot in Australia. But I will say there is definitely a big difference between the Tongans in the US and the Tongans I run into Australia, New Zealand, and Tonga. And this is kind of like what we're talking about. It's because of the environment, right? It's the same genetic material. It's the same people,
correct,
but in different environments. And Sonny physique, he's making a very fair assumption. It sounds to me like challenge, right? And the typical thing in Tonga, depending on the circumstance or the environment that the challenge came, it's embarrassing to try and engage with someone in a physical contact if it's in front of people, or it has to be pretty bad. But you notice some of our brothers and sisters here in the US, they're not as concerned with the perception. They're driven more by, hey, if I'm upset with you, we're gonna call it out right now, right? There's no such thing as, oh, guys, it's a little embarrassing. There's, and I think it's just driven because, yes, the US is a very competitive environment.
Different
right?
animal.
The US, it's a whole different animal. And there's another video where it's I think he's Samoan, but he speaks Tongan. He's going to do a reaction to this, and he's a US based guy. But we got to remember that the political, the economic systems in Australia, New Zealand, and Tonga are a lot closer together
Correct.
than they are to the political and the economic systems in the US. The US is heavily merit based, right? And that's where I think he's in Tonga and so forth. You rely more on your leadership to make decisions,
Mm-hmm.
right? To allocate resources and people to execute a task. In the US, there's a lot more that's trickles down those responsibilities and those decisions to individuals, that individuals have to speak up. You have to, the way the structure and the politics and the economy is, you have to speak up, you have to compete, or you'll get left behind, right?
Yeah.
Only in rare occasions when you have good leadership. And I face this many times, and I'll give a prime example. Growing up in Tonga and playing rugby, you
Mm.
can take the approach that Sonny is saying. You just say,
Correct.
"Oh yeah, oh you're the best." Not really, I just do my. You rely on your leadership and people to say, "No, these are the good athletes," and put them into the right
Yes.
positions. When I went to St. Louis, it was a whole different ball game. We could be friends hanging around at
Yeah.
school, but once practice started,
It's full
everyone
on.
is fighting. It was a new experience for me, and it took me, just under a year to get into that mindset. You'll have in your rugby practice amongst your teammates, you will kind of take it easy on certain people and stuff. You do that at football practice, the guy is fighting for your spot, and
Yeah.
you're trying to win the other guy's spot. So it is 100% competition, right? So if you try to do the come in the humble, you'll get steamrolled, right?
Mm.
Sometimes your coaches will see it as, oh, that guy doesn't want it enough, right?
Mm.
He which could be the total opposite. It's just a cultural and mental perspective that's very different,
Yeah.
because the US mindset is, oh, if you're going to come in and say you're not that good, oh, you're not hungry enough for it. You
Mm.
don't want it, right?
Yeah.
Then they'll give it to the guy who's out there saying, yeah, I'll do it. I'll take a shot at it. I'll
Yeah.
do. That's a much more. Here's another way to look at it. That's the entrepreneur's mindset. The
Mm.
entrepreneur's mindset is, man, I don't know the answers for everything, but I'll say I can do it and I'll figure it out as I go.
Mm.
Where the other mindset is, no, 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 come in low and improve upon what the opportunity looks like as you move forward. But that's my initial thought there.
Yeah. No, now that I've kind of gathered my thoughts and I was just thinking what he was saying, what makes New Zealand very similar to Tonga. And he's exactly right. There's a flight, Air New Zealand particularly, every day from New Zealand to Tongatapu, 6 days of the week, every day, Tua,
Mm,
except Sunday. So of course you're getting that migration, like what you said. You can go to between those two easily, right? Easily every day, and there's always that cultural link that's kind of close by. That kind of spreads that from Tongatapu's influence. And I've kind of mentioned before Tonga's influence in the Tongans here in New Zealand. I've mentioned it before that Auckland is very unique in a way that you can come here as a Tongan and do everything in your own language, right? And I think I've never touched the what's the weakness, what's the opposite, and there is an opposite.
mhm.
What's the opposite? When you leave the island of Aotearoa and you get to the real world, to America, where the big things happen, like in Europe, it's gonna be a while and it'll be very difficult for you to adapt quickly because the environment is a lot more competitive. You understand that the world is much bigger than what you thought it was. So people, like what you said to it, like in the US, where we've experienced, they don't care what environment they're gonna in. It's either you do it now or I'm gonna do it another day. Like it's either you show up to be better than that person because no one else is gonna speak for you. So
Mhm.
that's the kind of the subtle differences, because in America is, especially in America, when you make it. And that's why do you think a lot of the Polynesians, I think of the Rock, the Polynesians who are actually having greater influence. The Rock, now Tulsi Gabbard, reaching probably the highest Polynesian lady in the political spectrum because they've gotten there because of their own merits. They
Mhm.
didn't have they didn't have the hot more leadership or whatever leadership in them to speak on their behalf to push them where
Orchestrate
they're at.
that. Yeah.
They've gotten there on their own hard work, right? I'm trying to think here in New Zealand, what's kind of been we rugby's kind of been the only platform, but rugby is still a small fish in the world, because the big sports, rugby is not really one of the big ones, because like I said, it doesn't reach to all parts of the world. But in America, everyone knows America, the political position, Tulsi Gabbard. Everyone knows The Rock through its wrestling and his businesses, the movies, the access, Hollywood. He's much more recognizable than any Polynesian. So that's kind of the thing, with some of the positives and kind of the kind of speaking for yourself to push more. But not only that, when you speak for yourself to do more, the entrepreneurship style, if you are able, that's why I mentioned in the prior podcast to wearing different hats, and then when you crack that ceiling and you reach to a level that not many Polynesians have reached to, then you kind of switch your Polynesian hat, and then you try to bring up the rest of your family, community. Kind of you start with your whole internal family, your kainga, and then like with the whole rest of the Polynesian community. So that's how I kind of see it, Tua, and why it's kind of different. And I know that Toa has only been there for a year, and it's kind of if you especially in America, if you want to do well or seek greater opportunity, you're gonna have to figure out that you have to do it yourself, or you surround yourself with people to encourage you to speak for yourself to reach your desire goals. That's what I would think. Because
No,
in
and
New Zealand,
yeah.
New Zealand and Australia are kind of just still, kind of way smaller economies compared to the big fish of the worlds like America, China, and let's just say not a single country, Europe, but like the European Union kind of thing. So those are the countries that are making the world go round. Those places. So.
No, 100%. And I just want to add that I think I think America is just a unique animal, man, because I
Mm,
used to think Europe was like close to like the American mentality. But
mm,
after I went to Amsterdam, we went to Germany, we went to
France.
England, we went to France. America is just on a different level, man. I see a lot more similarity with New Zealand and Australia and Europe in
Yes.
just I was just blown away. Like the average American, the expectation for the average American's daily workload and the average American's time spent working is not on the same level. Like I was blown away. Everywhere in Europe I went,
Yeah.
like things didn't open until like 9, sometimes 10 o'clock in the morning. By like 6 or 7, things are closed down. Like 70% of the businesses are closed down.
Mm,
Right. And then you come to America, that's like 9, 10 o'clock. That's busy time, man. That's when the
mm-hmm,
restaurants are full because people have been working all day. They're gonna eat dinner, or they're eating their dinner just before they go do a night shift. Right.
mm,
And I was just blown away at and this is that culture and that mentality is in America. It's a much more competitive environment
yeah.
and you're driven to work more. And I was just like, holy smokes. No wonder why the American economy is funding the world because the
Mm,
average American is working 2 to 3 times more, right? The productivity you get out of each individual that's working in America, I felt like, I mean, I hopefully I'm not coming across as ignorant or whatever, but it's like 2, 3x,
mm,
right? 2 to 3x. Like, I meet a lot of people from Europe. It's like, oh, yeah, I've been on holiday for 3 months. And I was like, dude, in America, the standard is you're lucky if you get 2 weeks off in the year,
yeah. Yeah.
right? And so
Mm,
you put that into perspective. That's why the environment produces a different type of mentality and an expectation. This is why I think, I don't know, you could probably validate. I've been saying this for like probably over a decade. Everybody has been talking about rugby coming to the American market and
Mm,
just, oh, we're going to come in and we're going to harvest the American market. And I said,
good luck.
guys, please just be successful in the rugby countries, and then maybe I believe you. The American consumer of sports has a very high expectation. Their expectation for performance is on a different level. You
Hmm.
can't even fill up a super rugby stadium with your expectations of a rugby country, and you think you're going to bring that product to America, and you think Americans are going to buy it. I was like, dude, you can't even get your rugby country to fill up your stadiums, right? And then
Hmm.
it's even made even more, it's even weaker than I thought, because look at the All Blacks right now. The All Blacks financially, from what I understand, are struggling. They're losing sponsorships, they're bleeding money, and the New Zealand Rugby Union could be going bankrupt, you know, and you're going to come in and compete with the NFL. You're going to come in and compete with the NBA. That, go to NFL game. Good luck, man. Good luck finding tickets for like some of the
Yeah.
better teams, and then go to the playoffs, Super Bowl. I mean, I think the environment is just totally different, and it shows in the behavior of our Polynesian people,
Yeah.
within the different environments.
Yeah. No, and just when you brought that to it, like the whole culturally, and I do agree with you. In even here in New Zealand, the ones the businesses who stay up till 12 to midnight, or even allows 24-hour service, are the American businesses, the McDonald's, the KFC. They tend to stay up much later, while the other
Mhm.
local takeout stores, or the other, uh, you know, uh, businesses that come from other countries, they don't stay as long as the American businesses, because the Wendy's, the McDonald's, the KFC, they stay till 24 or till midnight. And it's just like what
Yeah.
you said, which is a different kind of work ethic, and also the ability to, like what you said, the competition to allow you to beat out your competition makes you want to work smarter, work harder, and make sure you outlast your competitor, which is a lot different than the smaller economies. You can take your time and more of a chill kind of, you know, um, chill attitude kind of thing. That's just kind of what I see
No,
over here.
100%. I wanna have you kind of share more, Mussy. I want to drive into that idea of what you talked about, the different hats, right?
Mm,
Because I really want to tie this to some historical observations that I have, but kind of talk a little bit more of what you were saying. What do you mean by it's important to understand the different hats and when to put hats on, or kind of share more of what your thoughts are on, or the ideas behind wearing different hats?
yeah, because we're in the, like, to me, when you're working in a company, or you're working in an environment that you need to seek promotion and stuff, y- that's the palangi hat you need to wear. That's the, like, let's just say, the American hat to a, especially, I'm just thinking my case with and I took this communication class in university, which is, we had to debate our positions, and it's almost like a debate. You have to speak up and saying why your idea is the best idea at all costs. That's what I'm trying to say. Because when you do that, you able to convince others to trust you, and convince others to believe, if they were on the fence, to know, okay, this, I'm going to take
Come
a
to my
chance on this
side.
person. Come to my side, take a chance with this person with this idea. It's the same thing at your work environment. When you're at a work environment, and you have people who are giving proposals to ideas on how to improve your process of work, or the systems that you currently use, and if you provide your idea and somebody provides their others, you need to say why your idea is better than your colleagues' idea, to make, because why your manager needs to apply your idea, because this is what I see works, and you need to say that my colleague's idea doesn't work because it's going to have whatever reason a negative effect on the business process, or there will be some holes and gaps that it won't fill. This is my idea. When you do that, your manager will take your idea and then it'll be executed in the process. And then what happens next? You'll be the next person that the manager will consider that you need to be promoted compared to the others. And that's part of that's the cutthroat business that you need to do in this modern world that we in, because if your ideas are not being used, or you're not putting yourself that people can believe you or draw them to your ideas, the colleagues and others that are going to have their ideas,
Mhm.
because it's not a nice thing. They're not going to take two people and elevate it to one position. There's only one position, and when that position comes open, it's only the person that's been the most involved, contributed, had the best ideas, and then you kind of provide the holes. And it's a cutthroat game, and you just, even though your colleague is a friend of yours, that's what I'm trying to say, is a friend of yours, and you guys get along at lunchroom, but when it comes to propose why their idea is not good, and why that's the thing, if you don't say and speak up why the other idea is not good, the other person, the manager, might use their idea, and it could be 2 or 3 years before you find out it doesn't work. And then instead of the company losing money, everyone can lose their job and opportunity, and people kind of go find other jobs, and then you won't be able to get that promotion what you wanted. Then when you go to a different job, you start at a brand new beginning, entry level kind of thing. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying too. And then when you get to the position, what's the Tongan hat? You get your Tongan hat, but you're able to, one, just say, hey, to your friend, I'm just trying to feed my family. I have some other family responsibilities that I'm trying to do, but I have if you have any ideas that is good for the business, let me know, and I'll still keep you. It's that friendly attitude that you still want to maintain that relationship. But when you get to that position, you are still, you made there because it's better outcome for you and your family, and not only that, for your rest of your kainga. That's the kind of, that's what, in my opinion, to what I see on how you should navigate life,
Mhm.
wearing the different kind of hats, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Instead of um instead of just going one way, because if you go one way with, going, always being, and humble is a good thing, is a humble, because you need some humility. But just saying, if you don't speak up and let people speak for you, it's hard for you to do great things in your life if you take that attitude. That's just me, but yeah.
Yeah. The reason why I wanted you to dig into that, Mussy, because I think this is when we talk about what the root is of being a Polynesian, or whatever background we have. The environment, yes, has an impact on us, but there should be some core things that stay steady, right? And
Mm,
we can observe and look at, we always get accused of, I saw this funny comment on social media that our podcast should be called Tongue and Ice rather than Polynesian Ice, right? Because we reference it so much. But I want to kind of reshare with our viewers that it's a fact that Tonga is the only group that survived and endured colonization. And we have to ask ourselves why. There's a lot of people who say, oh, it's because the Tongans just conceded. They didn't want to fight. They were
yeah, yeah.
cowards. Well, okay, that's one idea, right? This is the live digital conversation. You can
Hmm.
throw that idea in the bowl. Okay. The idea that I observe of, and I want to bring up here, is close to that idea that you just shared, Masi.
Yeah.
Tongans understood that there's different hats, right? When I deal with the Westerners, I have to understand the Westerners' mentality. I have to understand the games or the rules by which they engage. And then I
Mm,
also have to understand what it means to be a Tongan
hmm.
and my people. And you have
Hmm.
to figure out how you marry those two things, which is literally what we are doing in a modern context, right? The nature of the world is changing and evolving so quickly, and we have to figure out, well, here we are, we're Polynesians, we're Tongan, we're Samoan, right?
Hmm.
We're Asian, we're Hawaiian. How do we face the reality that this change in technology and in economics, we are not going to win out in direct battle. We're not going to win.
Yeah.
None of every example that we saw of Polynesians going into direct warfare with the West, it did not turn out well, right? Colonization, whenever you went into direct physical conflict,
Yeah.
it always ended up in colonization. So do we see that the Tongan leadership do different? Oh, we see they have, obviously we can't engage in warfare because their technology and their sheer number of
Yeah.
them is superior. So we have to understand by what gain is that they do recognize. Oh, they have structured government. They
Yeah.
have a constitution. They have leadership that is structured in a certain way that they will recognize. And they
Mm.
also recognize that, you know what, not only will they recognize formal structured leadership, but they also recognize if a competitor is engaged in a relationship, and then they have to be more respectful. And I think that was one of the hats that Tupo the First had, that Laufiri Tonga had, that a lot, and we have to break it down to more than just Tupo the First. Because if Tupo the First was the only one who saw that that vision, Tonga would have fallen. But
Yeah.
we're looking at all the chiefs around and under Tupo the First. They saw that. They whether Tupo the First visibly explained it to them or not, they saw that vision. And so did Laufiri Tonga in his self-sacrifice to allow Tupo the First to be successful. But this is an important part of understanding which hat to wear,
Mm.
right? Even the religion. There was the Christianity hat. They wore that hat, but also understood there is a line that we don't want to cross. Like, for example, yes, we see a lot of similarities in the old religion and Christianity, but that doesn't mean we just let the palangis dictate where tides go,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a
Mm.
line. In that scenario, the Christian hat kind of came off and the Tongan leader hat came on, right?
Mm.
And said, yeah, I believe in the new God, but as a Tongan, also, it
Yeah.
doesn't make sense for the tithing to go overseas.
Mm.
So the Tongan leader hat was more on than the Christianity hat, and it made a very wise decision. And I think that's where, at the end of the day, with us as Polynesians living in the different, and there's no right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah.
Those are just different ways to live life, different ways to adapt to our environment. But as modern day Polynesians, I think that's an important thing to understand. Like you're saying, Masi, okay, you got to figure out your Western competition hat, put it on, but also recognize when you come to a family event, well, you probably shouldn't be wearing your successful
Yeah.
entrepreneur Western approach to relationships and order and structure. You should probably take that Western hat and put on your Polynesian hat in that setting,
Mm.
right? Where you say, oh, okay, so there is another set of order and structure. And you don't have to give up one for the other completely.
Yeah.
There's a way to manage it. And I think our ancestors understood that and they even used it. And I think that's one of those important root skills of our culture and our tradition that we should try and foster and maintain.
No, and Tua, and I was just thinking that the regarding relationship, it's always good to wear your Polynesian hat because Polynesians are experts in relationship, and that's what I say. When you reached your goal to that position that you've kind of fought for after maybe cutting down your competitors, that could be your colleagues and good friends at the workplace. But then when you get there, wear your Polynesian hat and invite them to a lunch or at your, at a after work get together or whatever, and then it's just embrace them kind of thing. It's just that's how it is kind of thing. And I just take the I'll give an example too of this kind of this hat with even my experience at work when I applied to one workplace. I got there, and then I was there for about 2 months. They had a celebration for me, had food, invited my whole extended family and everything come over. Like they spent this new workplace spent quite a bit of their time, and their new colleagues had food out for all of our families. They came in and I invited all my families up to like maybe 15 of them, quite a few.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, fed them and stuff. And then I started the new role 2 months, and then I saw another role that was a lot higher paid. Tua, I applied for that role and I got it, and then I had to tell my current place that hey, you know what? There's no hard feelings or anything, but I found another job that is willing to pay a lot higher for my services. I'm gonna go there unless you're gonna pay me even more what they're offering. They said they can't they can't offer me that, but they still asked me to still stay because they were still convincing me, oh, that job, you're not gonna do it. I was like, I can do any job as long as you're gonna pay me a lot of money, because you know what that money trickles down? It trickles down to me being able to carry out my family kavengas, my family responsibility. And when I have families who have need some emergencies in Tonga, or with my brother needs anything in Tonga, I can have extra cash that I can always send over. That's the that's the Polynesian hat that I'm thinking. At the
Hmm.
same time, I'm wearing the Western hat saying no. I'm gonna say, if you can't give me the money what I'm asking for, I'm gonna go. Even though they were so nice, this is the important thing, and this is what Westerners do well. And I think you're right. You gotta be very careful with this. Is Well, not careful, but just don't get emotionally attached to your workplace. It's a work business, and once you figure that out, it's just a work business, and you make work just work. It's just a platform for you to do what you need to do as a Polynesian. That makes it easier for you to navigate life, and that's an example that I just want to share with all our viewers, that that's how I take it with the multiple hats. And it was kind of, it was the rest of the workplace were kind of sad trying to convince, but even up to now, it's been the right decisions. So because our family as a whole, and the extended family is doing much better, just be the increase of the financial salary that I was able to get. So that's just an example too of wearing the multiple kind of hats kind of thing, how you navigate.
No, 100%. Let's with the good internet, we have the good internet so far. Let's get back to some of the comments.
Okay.
So Lani Lolohea says, Malo Taulava, welcome,
Malo.
Lani, to the live digital conversation here in the Polynesianized podcast. Another regular, Mo says, what's up, Tonga kids? Welcome,
What's
welcome,
up? What's up?
Mo. Kim N says, what are you guys talking about? We're covering a wide variety of topics, Kim, if you're still on to the live. Really, we're talking about Polynesians and the different environments we're growing in, and how do we maintain what we think is the core or the root of what it means to be a Polynesian in the modern setting.
Mm.
So here's another interesting comment here. We'll go to this one first before we go to that one. Willie, Afeaki, Malo Willie, he says completely agree to what Malo,
Malo,
Malo
malo.
Willie. This one I wanted to bring up. I think it's very relevant just because I am in the
Ooh,
construction industry,
this is your
right?
field, Tua. I can read out the question
Yes,
for you, and you can
go ahead.
answer for Clydemore here. Biggest difference I have found in the U.S. from New Zealand regarding engineering or construction. Americans are process heavy, where in my case, or in New Zealand based, it's raw engineering based, actual engineering. Interesting. What do you think about that, Tua?
Yes, this is a very, very good example of the biggest differences between Europe and the US.
Okay.
In Europe and in New Zealand and probably Australia, I'm not as knowledgeable in Australia, engineer heavy, right? It's engineering heavy. You know what it is in the US?
What is it?
Builder. It's builder heavy. The builder is now, and architects and engineers don't like this, because the
Mm.
traditional model is that model that Clyde Moore is sharing. You have your owner would either hire the architect or the engineer,
To lead the
right,
project.
to kind of lead it and be the brains of the project. And then the third layer is the construction guy, right?
The builder.
In the
Yeah.
US, it's shifting, and it's majorly shifted. It goes owner, your builder, engineer, architect. And the reasoning behind it is this is a great example of the shifting in mentality. Like we talked about in Tonga, the traditional way that Mr. Physique was sharing, and in New Zealand, it's about the expert, and the expert knows best, right? And because they're the expert in engineering and architect, and that means they should be leading. US, it's performance based. And you know who's motivated more to perform and deliver on time and on budget? It's not the engineer and it's not the architect. It's the builder. It's the builder that the one that is driven to perform. So owners have now shifted, because in American culture, it's merit based and it's performance based. They notice that if they have the builder as the lead, the engineering is streamlined. It's not over engineered, because the builder will say, that's too much. We won't be, that's too much engineering, right? That's too much of a requirement. We can do it, meet the same quality and safety requirements for cheaper, and get the work done faster.
Okay.
And so that's the shift. And that's a prime example to show the differences in the mindset and the approaches in the construction industry. So I appreciate that, Clyde Moore,
Okay.
for sharing that
Hopefully
comment.
that answered your question, Clyde Moore, right there. Aotearoa.
See here. Let's go to this other video that was kind of a reaction. I think he's a Samoan guy. I could be wrong, but he did like a reaction from an American perspective regarding Mr. Physique's Sonny Physique's comments. So let's listen to that and have another outsider, a third party thoughts on it. And this time it'll be in English, so that's good.
Oh, I'm not hearing the sound, Tua.
Oh, you're not hearing the sound? Let's redo this. Oh yeah, there we go. That's why. Good point. Let's restart it. Can you hear now?
Yep.
Okay.
What's up, gang? It's your boy Thomas Foley here with Darko Concrete Cutters. Chi! Shout out to the Taco Sunday. For those that don't speak Tongan and you guys watch this video and you guys are wondering, what is he talking about? Well, he's talking about this. So he's talking about Tongans that grew up in Tonga and now hiki pe me Tonga ki Amerikani, or to any movie, right? To America, New Zealand, they moved from Tonga to New Zealand, Australia, or America, right? So he's talking about the differences of their ulunganga, right? Their aka, right? Like how Americans are and how New Zealanders are. So he was referencing that a lot of the Tongans that moved to New Zealand is they still have their anga, right? They still anga whakatonga, right? Like still have the culture ways, the ways of doing it, respectful, roto maulalo, all that stuff, humble. They still have that. It's kind of, there isn't a change in moving from Tonga to New Zealand or to Australia. Maybe because of the environment, that's what he's talking about. But he was talking about how when he's here in America and he goes around and he meets some of the people that he grew up with or some of the people that grew up in Tonga, you know what I mean? Like, they're different. And let me explain that. Here in America, you can't, like when ask a question, right? When you come from Tonga and they ask you, are you good at this? Are you good at that? Are you good at rugby or whatever? And Tongans being Tongans and who they are, they're very humble with who they are. So they don't like to be cocky or anything like that. So they'll be humble and say, oh, shy. You know what I mean? I'm okay. I'm all right. They wouldn't be overly dramatically telling people oh yeah, I'm super good. Like they wouldn't do that. That's not who they are. But when you come here to America and those people that came from Tonga to America, they changed the ulunganga, right? Like they changed the way they are because of the environment here is all about confidence. It's all about like work, work, work. You got to work for this. If you're weak, humbleness and all, being modest and all that's a sign of weakness. That's how they view it here in America. So they've adopted that mindset. So when a new person from Tonga, like come here to work or find opportunities, and they meet their peoples here, the question is asked like, are you good at that? And then when they respond with a humble answer, no, like they respond in a humble way, that is taken as weakness. So these people will go to the Faikavas and they will tell everybody, oh, you know what I mean? Like he's not smart. He's saying he's all right doing that. Like type of stuff that's being taught in Tonga. That's their mindset. That is crazy to me. And I didn't notice that until Sonny brought it up. But I realized, man, like that is crazy because from what I hear about Tongans in New Zealand and Australia, they're very humble with that. Like it's like they never missed a beat on how they move and their ulunganga and how they are, very cultural. So they respect. Here in America, it's not that America changed them. It's just the lifestyle here. The lifestyle here is fast paced, confidence. You got to build your reputation here, and all that stuff, right? Which could be a negative thing too. So Sonny's correct. For a lot of people that don't speak the Tongan language and they're like, man, I want to know what he's talking about. But that's literally what he's talking about. He's literally talking about how majority of the guys are literally, they changed the way they think it because here in America made them change. They have to be confident. They have to be a little cocky. And that, in that case, it kind of it kind of turned into a negative thing where they, shiolalo, they look down at somebody that come from Tonga. That's Samoans too. Samoans are the same freaking way. They come from Samoa to America, and it's like that's the same type of vibe that they get. So Sonny's right when he says here in America, when asked like, for example, if he says, if they ask you a question like, "Oh, like, are you good at rugby?" and he responds with a weak answer or a humble answer, they're gonna look at him and say, "Man, he's what kind of Tongan kid is this that came from Tonga and he doesn't have confidence." Well, he was taught just like when I was in Tonga and I saw this. This is why I love the people so much when I was there, is that they were humble. They came from humble beginnings. They didn't have much. And so that's what they were taught, to be humble, to be grateful. And then you come here to America and you see Olalo to them. He is not wrong when he says that. Now Shiolalo, man, that's crazy that they would Shiolalo to their own people because they're humble in their, in their answer or their response to their, their questions. And so that's just my message to all you guys on those that don't speak the language. Me being Samoan, I'm super grateful to learn the Tongan language and understanding where Sonny's coming from, and then be able to help our people here too. So for a lot of young cats here in Tonga, in America, please, man, I love the Tongans that come here, respectful, humble.
I think that kind of covers the point there. What are your thoughts, Mr. Aotearoa, on his comments and observation?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, and that's the thing, right? What is America been known in today's modern world? It's for its innovations, right? A lot of that innovation comes because of probably multiple people. It's probably they've made mistakes here and there, and let's just say if they just stayed that route of just knowing that their idea doesn't work, they would have given up. And a lot of the innovations that we have in today, the world would not be able to have it. I just think of like the famous inventor Thomas Edison with the light bulb. How he was dropped from school and the teacher said he was no smart or
He's
whatever,
an idiot.
homeshot idiot, and then
Yeah.
like he had 100 mistakes, but he finally got the right one correct, and we enjoyed the light bulb. And today, but see, and that's what I'm saying. It's just America is just different in that sense. To me personally, it could, and that's probably the worst thing. Maybe our Polynesians in America probably need to probably improve is I don't I don't feel lalo in anything. If somebody, I'm used to if they answer in a humble way, it is what it is. I don't see that as a weak or anything. That's just me personally, but I just don't know. I just don't know why people do see that as or see that kindness or a humble answer as being weak and then spreading the word around to others. But I guess some people are like that. But at the end of the day, this is a good example of why maybe things in Tonga haven't been changing because people always just say, let's just go the humble route and let things go the way they need to go. Like there's always pros and cons to to these things, but and that's what I'm trying to say. It's just a little different, and to me, the best method to navigate these things, you know who you are, but it's wearing the hats when in and out. To me, that's the Tongan hat. If I speak to another Tongan fellow Tongan and he gives me that answer, to me, I'm not wearing the Western
100%.
Palangi hat, taking that as a weakness. See, that's not me. And maybe many Polynesians are still trying to figure that part out, which is unfortunate. And if you're an old gentleman, you can't figure that out, and you've been living overseas more than you lived in Tonga, where you came from. That's unfortunate that you've kind of not be able to master that. But the whole changing of hat is a is definitely a skill when to wear it. But to me, if I see a Tongan kid like Sonny Physique, that's my Tongan hat, engage with him, and if he gives me that kind of answer, whatever, then it is what it is. It's nothing it's just whatever kind of thing. But that's the thing. Some people always want to wear the Palangi hat for everything, and the Western hat or the American hat for everything, and then they end up figuring out and getting to trouble or like spreading misinformation or whatever about a certain person. So to me, it's that skill of mastering wearing the hats, and to me, that's the closest thing I can explain as a Polynesian living in overseas for more than I've lived in Tonga, because I only lived in Tonga for 11 years. I'm over 30 now, been living outside of Tonga most of my life. And mastering wearing the hats is definitely an ongoing thing. I feel like I've had better control of it now, because of my personal experiences. But to me, I do see it with other Polynesians um, around around the world that still find it very difficult, which is unfortunate. But it is what it is. I don't know. That's my thoughts, Tua. I don't know what
Yeah,
you think.
no, that's why I really wanted to dig into that idea you have on the hats because I think that's the underlying theme here,
Mm,
right? Is how do we navigate being a Polynesian, quote unquote Polynesian, Tongan, Samoan, Tahitian, Fijian, Hawaiian, in this changing environment is understanding that hat wearing process, right? And it's it shouldn't be something that we say, oh, that means you're not Polynesian. Just think about it for a minute. Our ancestors were navigating from New Zealand, where it gets really, really cold,
mm,
right? All the way to Hawaii, one of the most isolated pieces of land in the world that's probably the best weather I've ever seen or experienced, all the way to Easter Island, that's just a rock in the middle of nowhere.
correct.
And within that and then that little tail that goes into Melanesia, and there's different people, there's different weather, there's different languages that they were encountering, there were isolation, and they all had to wear different hats to be successful in those different areas. However, the one hat that they all shared was the Polynesian Empire. The
Mm,
familial tie that, despite their dispersedness, the unique challenges they faced in different areas, there was the one hat that they all shared, the
correct.
Polynesian Empire, right? The
Yeah.
Polynesian nation. And whenever the leader or the family tie from that nation came. This is where we talked about the kava ceremony. The kava ceremony was the hat that united all of the Polynesian nation. That's the one activity, that's the one thing that said, yes, we may be separated, we may be facing different challenges from Hawaii to Easter Island to New Zealand and deep into Melanesia, but there's the one thing that we share, kava. And that kava was an indicator we knew where our role was into the familial picture. And you only forget that that hat if you totally disregard it and you only take on a different hat. And this is what we say, "Ngalo fei tu ke hapa mi ai." That's literally what that is. That's forgetting that, that very first hat that you were given when you were born. Don't forget that hat.
I got another word, Tua. It's a popular, and I see it many other of our people too when they go overseas. Mo'ui ngalo too.
Yeah.
Just I think that's another word. They just mo'ui ngalo and just kind of it's alpha. But
well, and this is one of my, I guess, I don't know how to say this in any other way. This is what I see as one of the biggest weaknesses in Tonga with the leadership Tonga has had lately. Right? They bring their foreign educated hat, right? And then they try to force it, these ideas, these educated foreign ideas, they try to force it upon Tonga. That's one type of leader I see quite a bit. Oh, I have this education from blah, blah, blah. I lived overseas and I learned all this stuff. Well, that's one thing. And then they bring it and they just try to force it upon Tonga. And then the other side of the leadership in Tonga is, it's just family, friends, and that's all that matters. We don't have to be
alumni.
Just alumni. It's the buddy system. You know what I mean? We that's all we need to be successful. When in reality, you need both, and it's the skill set that our ancestors showed us from Laufidi Tonga to Po the First and all the chiefs around them that said, no, there's a time to put on the Polynesian hat in the right setting, in the right place. Time to put on the Westerner educated hat or business hat or whatever it is. You have to navigate those two. And I think, for example, in Tonga, and it sounds like Samoa is going through some similar challenges as well with the snap elections. They're having a hard time on aligning the proper hat in the right setting at the right time at the right place. And that inability to navigate those two things is leading to chaos, which happens on a countrywide, but it also happens on an individual level, right? On an individual level, which is why a big part of the Polynesian nation was the spiritual portion, was the religious portion, because that is another thing that transcends the temporal hat of the world, right? Like we have the fuakavenga as a Tongan, or what were the Samoans call theirs? The fa'alavelave, and if that's the only thing that drives the way you behave, to say that that's what it means to be Samoan, then you can't transcend what happens after this life, which the Polynesian ancestors said, there's a life after this one. That, you know what? I don't have to make my kavenga today or my responsibilities today hate you, right?
Yeah.
I just have to fulfill my responsibilities. Just kind of like how you saw your change in job from a Westerner hat of, hey, it's nothing personal. This is just business.
Yeah.
I see the same thing happening with fa'alavelave and fuakavenga, that all of a sudden people start disliking each other or holding grudges against each other because, you do this, or you did me wrong. But if you pay attention to what our ancestors did, one of the stories that we mention here quite a bit is William Mariner, where before they're going to go fight each other at Takolotao, they have a little family reunion, which means family was on both
We're on
sides of the
opposite
battle,
sides.
but it wasn't personal,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't personal. Another prime example was, that Eliota guy misquoted the heads that were cut off in Kolomotua or whatever, and Maui Tegelangi shared that the real story was, I think his name was Makaui, whatever his
Yeah.
name was. He actually delivered those heads from two guys who were not listening to him, delivered it to the Tu'iwhanukupolu because they used to be, they're very close friends and probably even family. They were on the same side in the past, but now because Makaui is from the outer islands and the Tu'iwhanukupolu was on Tonga Tapu, they're on opposite sides, but that didn't mean they hated each other. They were fighting. They might have been trying to kill each other, but that didn't mean he disliked anyone on a personal level. It was, hey, I just got to do my job, right? And I think that's something that, from my observation, some of the leadership in politics, and maybe even a little bit in business back in Tonga, and also just with the Polynesian communities overseas, that we need to take a page from our ancestors and spend more time and energy to figure out the hat. Number one, which hat is the most important, and which hats to wear at the right time and at the right place.
Yep. 100% agree with that. Yep.
So let me see here. We're looking at the time. Let's finish with this one. We'll finish off with Will's Word. I think it's what it's called, and it's from the Pacific Morning Network. What is it, Masi? What is it? PMN?
PMN News. Yep. Pacific Media
Okay.
Network.
All right. Well, let's finish with that, and I think this is a good way to maybe wrap it up. Is to go over Will's experience and his perspectives, as I think he's in New Zealand. Is this in New Zealand? Yeah, it's probably New
Yep.
Zealand. And his observations after visiting the U.S. Let me double check the sound here. Yep, I think we're good. Let's play.
Will's Word.
Right. Now, I recently returned from a trip to the United States, and I'll admit, it has profoundly challenged the way I think about society, values, and the direction we're all heading in. And from the moment I landed, it was abundantly clear to me that the United States, and I'm sorry to say, is capitalism on steroids. The divide between the rich and poor was so painfully obvious. I suppose what struck me most was that palpable sense of every person fending for themselves. In America, everyone's out to make a buck, and honestly, who can blame them, right? With a federal minimum wage still locked at $7.25 an hour, a figure, might I add, that's been unchanged since 2009, survival often hinges on hustle, not stability. Now, in a system where profits soar and costs rise, it's arguably people, not corporations, who are left to suffer. Nowhere is this more evident than in the country's fast food culture. Arguably an insidious example to me of capitalism run amok. Let me contextualize it. Now, on every corner, every highway, and practically every billboard, fast food is relentlessly marketed to people just trying to make it through the day. I do not blame everyday Americans for the obesity crisis they face. I blame the fast food industry for targeting vulnerable communities with cheap, hyper-processed, frankly crap food wrapped in convenience. And I suppose the point I'm trying to make here is that my experience in the US has forced me to ultimately reflect on what we value back here in New Zealand. I won't lie, we're far from perfect, but there's still a strong undercurrent of community, a belief in fairness, and at least a basic recognition that people matter more than profit margins. Now, this trip served as perhaps a sobering reminder of how fragile that balance is and how easily it could tip if we stop paying attention. So as we grapple with our own challenges here in Aotearoa, let's take a breather and let's take this as a warning. The moment we allow the profit motive to eclipse human well-being is the moment we start to lose our sense of community. That's Will's word.
Maria, he has a cool voice. I like his voice. What are your thoughts, Mr. Aotearoa? As a Tongan American residing in Aotearoa, what are your thoughts to Will's word?
He has a, I don't know if he understands the whole history of. I don't think he's just focusing on the negative side, which capitalism. If people use it, to me, this is more of a blame of the politicians not putting the American people in the forefront. I'm talking about with the taxes, right? There's a lot of misappropriation of funds that should help the American people to do well, and also the amount of taxes. To me, you gotta cut a lot of the taxes so that people can do well for themselves. Um, to me, now that I've lived in New Zealand too for a while, to me, this is another thing that's probably which I see unfair, and there's a lot of social programs here in New Zealand is built on, and there is no how would I put it? There is no incentive to really go get work. You can get government housing on your own. You can get government benefit on your own, and you can get government subsidies on your food and everything if you just stay you are unemployed, and if you get a job, then they take that away from you. To me, that's not fair on the people who are living, you know, paycheck to paycheck on just getting by. And to me, what drives the funds to really have people to do well is, to me, there's no, what really drives to create an economy. The idea of capitalism is so far the only best way for people to do well. It's how you use capitalism to fund, and you're having, because it creates you all this wealth, but it's the politicians and your government that decides where that money goes. And if they're putting it in the wrong places, then you're going to create a huge gap. So that's probably the issue that's facing in America. But like the issue here in New Zealand, like I said, the social welfare is horrendous for a small population of only 5 million, and the social welfare to me it's not healthy, because you're creating a society of people who are reliant on government to solve all their problems, and that's the issue. Remember, the society we live now is the society that was built that there was really no government. Every society or village or a city had to create the prosperity that we enjoy now, right? There was no government trying to solve your issues or provide you employment or whatever. It was all on the community. But like the big thing that's kind of handled, that's caused a lot of poverty in America, which Trump is trying to bring back, is bringing back the critical businesses that helped build America what it is now. But there's been a lot of offshoring it to other foreign countries because it was cheaper labor. So and that's the thing. If you keep it in the country, you even if it costs a little bit more, you should pay that, because it helps with the whole well-being of your society. So to me, that's that's probably the issue that's probably America is trying to solve. But you know, I don't know if he understands that capitalism is really what funds the world. I mean, capitalism is what brought I'll give you an example. The country of Singapore. Capitalism in Singapore was able to bring that country to first world country, I think within a generation. I think
Yeah,
Singapore was
first
known
ones ever. Yeah.
first one ever, and that's a capitalism idea that was able to speed that process. But there's no other. I mean, you want to use socialist and communism are some of the other ideas that are there that tend to not do so well, or your economy does not grow if it leans too heavy on those philosophies. So what's an example of that? Look at the countries of Venezuela, Cuba, and the Soviet Union. You know, Soviet Union collapsed. They had to change. Um, Venezuela is actually collapsing on starvation, and even Cuba is a very, very poor country. China has learned to adapt. They have the image of government control, and that's what they're doing with the whole communism, because government is control. But the way they practice and trade is very capitalistic. So
Hmm.
that's what China has adopted to be created, to be a strong economic powerhouse, is because of that philosophy. But to me, here in New Zealand, there's the that's it's the reason why there's a lot of well, and I'll give this example too. America, the government still views New Zealand as still second world country. I don't know if you know that, Tua.
Hmm.
The reason, yeah, because when the missionaries, the LDS missionaries, come from New Zealand to America, to the MTC, they still view them as second second world or third world, because there's a lot of diseases here in New Zealand, like rheumatic fever. You know what rheumatic fever is? That illness is pretty much, it's because when the
Like,
homes are, when the homes get too cold and the mold and stuff builds in, and it creates your heart problems and breathing issues. That's still an issue here in New Zealand, but in America that's pretty much wiped out because of the better quality homes. But New Zealand's homes and stuff are still very, very old school, that the filters don't filter the house properly, because they're still, like I told you too, like even the homes are still kind of cold. This is winter, because a lot of the homes in New Zealand were built without insulation, right?
hmm
So that's what I'm saying. Like, there's certain things that New Zealand can definitely improve on. But to me, I don't know if it's healthy. I don't know if it's healthy to help those who don't want to help themselves. To me, the best part is there's three kind of homeless kind of people. There's the people who really are trying to look for work but they can't find it. There's people with addiction issues with drugs, and then there's those who really
they just want to be homeless.
they want to be homeless. And to me, we got to help the ones who have the addiction issues and mental health, right? And that's a tough one, because I don't know the workforce is there in any country. It's a lot of work, especially that mental health and addiction issues with the countries, the homeless that's coming from that. And then there's people who really just are trying their best, but because of unfortunate um, circumstances that occurred to them, they no longer have work and they're kind of homeless. So if we can help try to figure those two, try to separate them instead of having homeless as one, I think that would be good. But to me, it's human behavior. There's those who don't want to work hard or don't work at all and still want to get what your neighbor has. And I don't know if that's right. So that's just me there. Kind of long answer.
No, I appreciate that. And I think, I mean, he brings up some fair concerns, right? Like, he says things that sound correct, and they are. Profits shouldn't matter more than people, right? And
Yeah.
and certain things that they sound good, kind of like certain ideas we hear that sound good, but when you sit back and you think about it, you're like, wait a minute. Do you fully understand that since America became the superpower, there hasn't been a real world war?
Mm.
You know what I mean? And you think about that, it's like, and why is that? Because the economic and military power that is the US. Now, granted, we're not saying the US is perfect, it has its problems,
Yeah.
but there's a reason why New Zealand doesn't have to worry about having the best military in the world, right? Like the worry that the Maoris had with England colonizing them, New Zealand and Australia, if it wasn't for the United States, would probably be worried that China would just come in and take over them. Because
Mm.
China could. If China wanted to, there's not very much that Australia and New Zealand could do to stop China. If
Their
China
first call,
wanted,
their first call will be to America. I guarantee you that.
absolutely.
Guarantee.
And so there's already the tensions going on right now, right? And what's the biggest reason why China wouldn't do that? Well, because the US is sitting around. So you have to take into account
Mm.
the military security that the United States provides. And the only reason why the United States can provide it is because the economic engine that the United States is. And this is one of the things I learned from my trip to Europe, and now looking at how much money the US spends around the world and how much the US consumes from around the world. It is not a stretch to say the American economy is what is elevating the world out of poverty. And we'll explain that. China alone was brought out of poverty because of the United States, in my opinion. The what? 25% of the consumption of the whole world
Yeah.
comes from the United States, which is ridiculous. You're saying 350 million people drive 25% of the economic activity of 7 to 8 billion people,
That's nuts.
right? That's kind of crazy. And so I think if he was to sit there and think about the logics, I mean, he mentioned in there, oh, the gap between the poor and the rich. Well, you mentioned communism, right? If you were alive, China killed hundreds of millions of people because of economic decisions in the socialist perspective that
Yeah.
killed hundreds of
Yeah.
millions of people. You had the USSR, but even let's take those out of the picture, right? Look at how natives were living and how they treated each other. If, like, let's say Tonga, for an example, the only people who could own property, right, were the chiefs and the kings.
Yeah.
So one could make the argument a gap between the rich and the poor was tremendous under those, right?
Yeah.
And you could go to almost anywhere around the world until capitalism came into play. You not only were rich and poor, it was really just some people owned the land and the property, and some people absolutely owned nothing. And you know what? The poorest in America compared to the poorest in other places. That's one of the things that I saw an interview of a guy in Africa, and he was going, what country would you want to live in? And he goes, America. He goes, why America? Because America is the only country where the poor people are fat. Right? America is the only country where the poor person has an iPhone, has cable TV, has a car, has all this food. Now, granted, it has its issues, weaknesses. The food, hopefully, with Maha, America Healthy again, it'll improve it.
Yeah.
But please, please don't come and say that the greatest economic engine in the world is a problem. In comparison to what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You remove America, you remove the wealth that you're enjoying in New Zealand. Because
Mhm.
America is, you could make the argument, America, you remove America, New Zealand's going to have to triple, quadruple their military spending. This is what Canada is having a rude awakening to.
Yes. Well, no, and just to add on to when that money they're gonna have to spend on military, have a real military in New Zealand, they're gonna have to take that from the social welfare, and that's
Yeah.
to me, and that's helping a lot of countries because even Europe, I think Britain's already taking money out of their that's a big social welfare country. It's taking that money and investing in their security because all of Europe, all of New Australia and New Zealand, like they rely on American protection, so they get to funnel all these social welfare programs until it's a fat pig. And when it's time, when America says, "You guys need to invest in your own interest and like show us," I mean, we're there to we're the leader of the free world, but show us that you guys have some kind of military that we're not, because at the end of the day, it's American lives that's gonna be at the forefront. And while the rest of the countries get like what he gets to sit there and super critique all these things that is bad, and he's never understand what war really looks like when it happens, because
Yeah,
it's not going to be New Zealand's in the front line. It's gonna be America. So
yeah,
that's the thing.
and also remember who rebuilt Europe, who
Yeah.
funded Europe. It was America who rebuilt Europe, who funded Europe. And granted, uh, there's some fair things he says. Grant, there's some things we can improve. The middle class has eroded a little bit. There has been a gap between the rich and the poor. But hey, compared to what? What are you? If you're going to compare it to New Zealand, I'll still take America quality of life over New Zealand. Don't get me wrong. I love New Zealand. You have great food. But if I had to pick one or the other, and I'm pretty sure if you were open up New Zealand and you opened up the US to everyone in the world, I am bold enough to say at least 90% of the world probably would pick the US, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
could be
and
wrong.
that's well. No, I'm pretty. That's a fair point, because I'm just thinking with the whole when he said about the food, like, to me, that's happening all over the world, unless you're like a country that really lacks infrastructure. The conveniency of food, that's everybody. Everyone's working, and that's the go-to place. And I mean, to me, it's gonna be a big government shift unless they allow and have better. To me, the only way to do this is have increased tax cuts so that you can have one parent at home. You know,
Mhm.
one parent at home to. That's the only way to combat the fast food and convenience culture that's happening all around the
Absolutely.
world.
Because if not, no one has the time.
No one has the time, because there's many families that both parents have to work, and the way for them to feed their families is picking up a fast food restaurant anywhere. So to me, it's less likely here in New Zealand, because one, you can still have rural places that you don't have to. You can still, it's a bit cheaper and stuff. But like Auckland, I can say for Auckland's like any other city in America that both. I don't know any families that only one. If only one person is working, they probably live in a social welfare subsidy by the government. If you bought a house in New Zealand, most of the time you're both of you are there's a mother and a father working to pay off that
Full time.
mortgage full
Yeah.
time. The only ones I know that both parents can stay home or do whatever, they live in a social housing.
Yeah.
They live in social housing, and social housing is a huge subsidy paid by the taxpayers of people who are working every day.
And to kind of close out and wrap this up together, you know, this is why it's important to understand what's the root, what's the most important thing, right? And to understand your environment, and to not just say, oh yeah, America is falling apart. It's like, well, trust me, if America were to withdraw and only care about America, you guys wouldn't like it,
Mm,
right? And granted, even us as Americans, we're like, why are we everywhere else? Why are we spending trillions of dollars overseas?
mm,
Why don't we bring that money back home? And everybody who, when we say we're going to do that, all the Europeans who are quote unquote developed nations, they're crying about it,
yeah.
right? And so forth. But really, my closing thoughts for the show today, Mr. Aotearoa, is we're living in a very fast paced world. Things are changing quickly. As Polynesians, I think we should spend time to really think about what it means to be a Polynesian, and whatever corner of the Polynesian nation that you come from. What are the core things that matter most to you, and help those drive your decisions every day? And also to recommend what Mr. Aotearoa said, also spend some time to understand that we have to wear different hats. There are different ways to think and behave depending on the environment and the circumstance that we're in. But also, don't forget the very first hat that you were given, the hat you were given when you were born, right? The
Mm,
cultural heritage and the blood that runs through your veins. That's not saying that your genetic material is superior to anyone else. It's about understanding who and what you are and behave accordingly, because we tend to say when you do those things, things tend to be better for you and more importantly for your family in the long term. Those are my closing thoughts, Mr. Aotearoa. What do you wanna close
Malo
us out
tua.
with?
Yeah, malo tua. No, appreciate it. My thoughts, my closing thoughts here. Um, everyone develop your own unique way of developing your Polynesian hat, and also whatever country you're in, that for us is that American hat. If you're in New Zealand, try to develop your own New Zealand hat and Australia hat, or wherever you are, and how you navigate life. But like what you said, Tua, don't mo'ui ngalo. To me, that's what I always say. Always make sure you know your Polynesian hat, because that's what connects us no matter what place we are from. And when it's time to wear the other hat to navigate your work, business, or anything, do what you got to do with that hat to get you there. But always know when to switch it off and on. And that's a skill that needs to be developed with the more Polynesians are living outside of our native homeland in Polynesia. The other thing is I want to touch to especially for people outside of America that has this lack of understanding, that they they need to appreciate that if it wasn't for America, they would be, especially in New Zealand. Our friend over there was speaking of. He would be speaking Japanese without the U.S. involvement. Like that's
100%.
that's what I
Japanese or
want to say.
German?
Japanese or German. I mean, I would say Japanese because they were
The
literally
Pacific.
they were in Papua New Guinea, working their way down to kind of take over Australia, gonna clean out the whole South Pacific. If it wasn't for America's involvement, there was no way Australia and New Zealand army were gonna stand in the way of the Imperial Japanese. So for the rest of the world to really look and be grateful for what America has done, because if without America, Fagaofa, like I said, he'll be saying konnichiwa instead of hello, my fellow Pacific worm, fellow, brothers and sisters, whatever. I'm just saying, love
Warm
the world.
Pacific
Warm Pacific
greetings.
greetings from PMN, But the world just needs to remember that America is going through its own trials. It's not easy maintaining superpower. And that's what America has
No.
been doing for many years. And China is the one that's kind of on the back, just really waiting to take over the world and be the only superpower, and see America erode. But America is what it is, and all the countries, especially Europe and this side of the world, that America is the only one that was able to preserve your freedoms and you enjoy the country you guys have right now, and enjoy all the good things and have your work and your families. Because without that, um, I don't know if you guys will immigrate under the Imperial of Japan. You guys probably come to America and become American citizens if that was the case. So, to me, just for everybody, just to look a little bit more in American history, and just have a sense of gratitude, because America is not perfect, but it's the best hope we have for the future as a
And
superpower.
I do want to highlight one thing that Elon Musk highlighted that is a great point.
Yeah.
There is only one nation in history that we know of that could have conquered the whole world in probably less than a year and yet chose not to. And that country is the United States of America. And here's the example. When America had the nuclear bombs and dropped it in Japan,
Mm.
there was no other country that had nuclear bombs. Do you know what? If America really wanted to, America could have said, everyone is now going to be under the American empire, or we're going to drop a bomb on you.
Exactly.
Literally, there's nothing, nobody in the world could have stopped America from doing that. Literally.
Mm.
What are you going to do if America decided to drop bombs on the rest of the world? Instead, America said, no, it was horrific. We had to bring the war to an end. You can question the ethics behind the decision. However, America chose not to colonize the whole earth, which is
Mm.
literally was within their power. So, and instead of colonizing the earth, what did America do? They funded the rebuilding of Europe. They created these trade deals with the whole world that said, yes, you can have tariffs against the United States, and the United States will have minimum tariffs against you, and literally brought the world out of poverty. So, I mean, it's a very difficult thing to kind of accept sometimes, but that to me is a reality. Um, and so I think that's really important. With that being said, Mr. Aotearoa, we will close as
Yes.
always to our viewers here at the live digital kava session, right? Where all ideas are welcome. Throw them into the arena, let the ideas compete. And the two invitations are always stay curious and have the courage to ask the hard questions. Until next time, peace and see you later.